welcome back to the Search Economy. We've had some guest conversations. We're rolling back with just a conversation between the two of us. So I'm excited about this topic. We've been discussing the CEO role a lot here at Pneuma and just how CEOs should think about the search economy. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, David, I'm excited to have one of these chats again. I was reviewing the list of things that I sent over to you in Slack ahead of this, and I'm interested to figure out like how you take some of these questions from the perspective of you are the CEO, but then you're also someone who is trying to push the search economy forward by helping Pneuma grow. So I'm curious / interested on this conversation and learning a little bit more from you in it. So welcome. I guess we're both kind of hosts, but welcome back.
Well, welcome to the OWN podcast.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe we jump off here. So I wanted to talk about the topic of just like control. I feel like control is something that most CEOs have. And from your perspective, as kind of the business grows, do you find that wanting control is a good thing, a bad thing, somewhere in between? Is it something you're learning on having to give up? Like, how do you think about control?
Yeah, it's one of those things to where I think control can be broken down into a few buckets, right? It's setting the strategy for what needs to be done and then tactically actually doing it as well. And I think even if you think about marketing, but broader than that, it's important to always have the strategic lens on everything as a CEO, but tactically you don't need to be the ones in charge or in control of every little thing that gets rolled out. I think it's a lot about setting the vision, understanding the overall goal and what needs to be achieved, and then uh, you know encouraging and almost giving the team all that they need to carry that out.
Is that do you factor just like the building the business, growing the team, like are when you're trying to grow the business with people, are you maybe assessing during that time frame if those individuals give you the opportunity as the CEO to kind of give up some of the pieces and things that you were holding on before and give up the control? Is that part of your process?
Yeah, definitely. I'd even say too, it's finding out where the company's gray spots are or weak areas are, whether you know them or not, and finding somebody that knows how to solve that exact issue, problem, whatever you may call it, opportunity. But yeah, we always look at, has somebody been here and done that before, and if so, do they know how to solve our problem as well?
In order for companies to grow, do you think the CEO should have more or should have less control as kind of the business evolves?
Yeah, I think it depends on what those goals are, especially if it's growth. I think you can argue one of two ways, but I'm always one to say the closer the CEO is to the business, the better. Now, too close can also be a problem as well. There's definitely a sweet spot of being involved, being empowering, but not being overbearing. Yeah, honestly, I'm trying to figure out where that is, where that sweet spot is for our company, but I see that a lot elsewhere. Sometimes you see CEOs lay off and take a really passive hand, and sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't, but the opposite happens as well. And I think for every company, every little piece of the puzzle and every part of that company really just depends on what their goals are and what role that CEO really wants to play. um, I'm always one to say that they always need to cast the vision, set the big picture, remind people of that. Make sure they're the ones having the tough conversations and really making sure that everything flows together and they're working as one big team. But there's certainly levels to that. I've seen people get really involved. Some people take a step back. Um, Also depends on the people that you have in your team and their willingness to let you be involved.
How much time and energy do you put into understanding how other CEOs have gone through the process and made those types of decisions, given up control to help grow the business? Like, how much time do you put into kind of learning from others, knowing that everybody's situation is kind of one of one and unique?
Yeah, probably a good chunk, but maybe not as much as I want to sometimes. But yeah, I think it's cool to see how other companies are structured, how other companies work. the roles that they play. I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how CEOs and how companies run that are client services companies, not just SEO or Google Ads like we are, but how's a really good roofing company run? That's still client services. There's still a lot of similarities that overlap. So I definitely try and figure out the similar business models that we have and some of the similar people in those environments. How are they operating? How are they running? What roles do people have? And ultimately, what are those people accountable for as well?
So, getting into kind of the bulk of the conversation, those were kind of to try to set the stage for this. But we, in the search economy, we talk a lot about the fact that as a business, we give up a lot of control because we believe that the buyers are now in control. They have access to tools, platforms, search engines to ask questions. You can even throw AI into the mix, and the output will be where the prospect will run in order to get their answers. Do you feel like through maybe building Numa, your conversations you're having just with Numa customers, do you feel like most CEOs understand that part of the search economy, that you got to give up control because the buyer's in full control? Or do you feel like there's still a large segment that feel like the brands are still in control of being able to get new customers through their existing playbook that they've been running for the last decade or so?
I definitely think it's a perception versus reality, right? I think the perception is that you can control exactly how a buyer buys, what their process is, and really make them step through a set of hurdles, whatever those hurdles may be. Um, I think a lot of companies, whether CEO or not, have an issue always admitting that maybe the buyer's a little bit more in control than what they want to admit. Um, just because it means that, well, a few things. One, not everything's trackable. If you can't make them walk through your own design funnel, then it's a lot harder to push them through one that you don't quite know how it works. Um, but two, I think relinquishing that control and giving it back to the buyer and letting them really go on offense and do things. I think it just flips marketing on its head. It's I'd say a lot less about putting content out that you think is going to do good and that you're opinionated on, but really finding what the customer is looking for. And that's why I always like starting with search and especially SEO for a lot of brands and businesses that we work with. You're making sure you understand what the customer is looking for, searching for. You understand their pains, their problems, how they work through a process and a funnel. Understanding the way people actually buy, not the way that we want them to buy, has always helped contribute to more revenue. But it gives every company a healthier understanding of really how their customers are buying.
I think it's pretty natural for human beings to, when we're creating strategy and process, to engineer it in the light, in the way that we want it to happen, right? We want to push people to our website, we want to get them to click this button, we want them to fill out this form, and we want them to book this
We want it
meeting.
to be perfect, simple, easy, right? Like I've had this conversation with clients before. Doing SEO doesn't mean that you're going to magically, invest in us. And then the next day somebody's going to walk through and be like, I Googled you and found you. And now I'm here and here's my credit card. Doesn't work like that. Maybe in some cases, if you're a brick and mortar, somebody might say, I found you on Google. But for a lot of times, what we see with clients is that they will Google you and then they'll go find you on social and then they'll read some content on the site. Maybe they sign up for a newsletter. Right, Google contributed, but it wasn't the only part of that, right? It's the mix of everything together. Honestly, what I frequently see is that somebody has that pain point, that whatever, they're just googling for something quick to solve it, right? You've used I think your hot water heater example before, but like hot water heater repair near me, repair Indianapolis, right? You're looking for somebody in the moment, but a lot of times the way that we see SEO work, it's not always so linear. It's not always invest in us, rank for this keyword, people Google it, and then that's the only thing that they consider. They like to do their hunting, their stalking, as I say, because again, they're on offense. They get to make the choice. The choice isn't made for them by a consumer or company, or a company, not consumer, which I think is the fun part, but definitely the different part in the way that we're trying to get our companies or clients in front of their customers. It's definitely not linear. We want it to be linear because it's easier to track and it's easier to scale, but that's not always the case.
So, do you find it easier to communicate the value of SEO through a proxy like a marketer, or directly with the CEO based on maybe a CEO looking at things from a input output perspective? Like, how have you seen success in just like those initial conversations on a topic that, unless you're kind of in it regularly, you probably don't
Stuff
know
to,
much
yeah.
about it?
I would always say marketers are the ones to get it quicker because they've been around it. They know what SEO is. And I think many of them know the importance of it. I think where it can always fall short is explaining the strategy, but also explaining how the inputs correlate to an output. A lot of times clients think it's very similar to paid media. We pay you and we see an investment. And that's not always the case. Sometimes it takes time for keywords to rank on Google. Sometimes it doesn't, but more than not, it's certainly going to be slower than paid media where you can turn on and turn off. Um, I think getting a CEO to understand a few things, right? We're not renting the market share; we're trying to own it. So whenever we get a keyword, making sure it's there not just for the month in which we did that work, but the years to follow is really important. But also correlating that over to market share as well. Somebody Googles, roofers in Indianapolis, those top 3, 4 searches to a consumer, that's all that exists in the market. To be fair, there are plenty more roofers in the market of Indianapolis than just the 4 that pop up or the 3 or 4 that pop up, but to a consumer, that is reality. That's everybody that exists. So making sure that it's brought to a bigger light and a bigger vision. It's more than just keywords, blogs, links, content, you name it. It's really getting your customer or your company, excuse me, and the website in front of those customers. And it's a perception builder, right? Like, you're one of the leading people in the market. You're always going to be in the conversation. You're always going to have a chance at bat. That's ultimately far more valuable than anything that you can turn on and off, like a paid media campaign. Um, right. Again, I think marketers can understand it quicker, but I think the CEOs are the ones that if they can buy in and understand the true vision and value of it, then it's really impactful. And I think in regards to that, we always like to make sure that, when we talk to the marketing side of things, we're talking with the data, we're talking inputs, outputs, getting tactical. But whenever we back up and talk to the larger, I'd say CEO, VP, maybe even board, it's explaining what the investment actually does to the business, showing them what happens if the investment isn't there. um, but really, I think at that level, it's about revenue, it's about attribution, it's about driving value to the company. But it's also just about making sure that you're popping up, you have your at bats, and you're really owning that side of the market share, so you can come up as a consistent option in the space.
So when a CEO maybe adopts a new strategy, or through their marketer adopts a new strategy like SEO, there's some control, right, that they're having to give up. Also, there's probably some trust that needs to be developed in order to kind of not only get the buy-in, but then go all in with the strategy. How important do you find the trust building process is with kind of the CEO profile when you're trying to have the conversation about the search economy and making sure they understand what SEO can actually do for their business?
I'd even say in my shoes, when we go hire a vendor, the number one concern I always have is, do you truly understand what we do? Right? You might be able to read that we do SEO and Google ads off the website, but what is it that we're actually doing for customers and the people we are working for? And I think as we come on board for new accounts and new clients, that's always the conversation that can help CEOs relinquish control and really understand that, what we're doing might be new, might be novel, but understanding that we know what you're doing in business and we also know who your customer is. What we're doing is just taking those customers, taking what you do in the business and creating a link between the two. We want to create a path to where, your ideal customers are searching for something that you do. Let's find a way to creatively get them to the website and let that follow through and impact your revenue as well. So ultimately, I think it's having the larger conversations about the customer, about the client base. um, I think there are other things, right? We always need to distill some confidence. SEO can be an interesting thing. If you go Google, SEO rates, you're going to get very different rates. You're going to get some at probably $5 an hour, some at $5,000 an hour. So it's something that we always like to try and build confidence in, to say, hey, we've been here, we've done that, we know what we need to be doing. And a lot of times when we go in and talk to accounts, even if it is with marketing folks as well, we're not diving too deep into domain authority. We'll talk backlinks, but we won't talk like specific content optimization tactics or how we crawl sites or technical SEO strategies, right? We're talking about the outcome. We're talking about where the flight's going to end up landing, not the whole flight plan itself. A lot of times we end up chatting through how SEO can be a new growth channel for you, something that can really help you grow the business, but not rely so much on a different growth channel that you already have. Market share, we already talked about. How it slowly, I would say, builds an audience, especially in the community that you're in. But other things about putting your brand in front of people, lowering customer acquisition costs. There's a lot that go into it. And I think the biggest way that you can get a company to buy in, the biggest way that you can get a CEO to buy in, isn't to talk about the tactics. There's no CEO in the world that cares about the EEAT framework for writing good content. They do care about revenue. And it's, lightly touching on the tactics so people know that you know what you're doing, but really leaning into the outcome and the strategies. Because I think if you talk to a lot of CEOs, they just assume that SEO is tactical. It's just a bunch of things that you do to the website. And I don't know, my competitor does it, so I must do it as well. I think it's a lot more than that. It's really a strategic way that you can grow the business and get in front of the people that you really want to get in front of. The way I always help people do or see that, I should say, CEOs especially. So if I could put 500 people in a room that have all searched for roofers in Indianapolis and you could have 30 seconds to talk to them and pitch them on what you do, would you? And 99 times out of 100, they're like, yeah, that sounds great. It's like, awesome. That's exactly what Google is, just in a little bit of a roundabout way. And we're going to use your website instead of an actual venue. So I often find putting an analogy like that as well can always help frame the impact.
You said a word there that I think might get the record to stop for a CEO, which was slowly. Most CEOs, that's a word. Slow. Most CEOs want things to move quick. Most CEOs want revenue to come fast because they have to answer to a board, all their other stakeholder groups. SEO takes a little while to get going, and I think it's definitely unique to specific businesses and people, audiences that are searching. How do you kind of set those expectations up front with CEOs so they don't call you maybe 15 day or a week, 2 weeks later saying this isn't working, I'm wasting my money?
Right. It's changing the timeline on it and framing the impact to be longer. The one thing that we've noticed with, especially think about like a Facebook ad or some of the other strategies, it's a constant input, input, input to get your output. But if you stop, it stops, right? Like as soon as you stop paying, as soon as you stop posting on social, as soon as you stop running a Facebook ad, the outcome is gone. The impact is gone. And the biggest thing that I can always say about SEO is that while leaving a vendor like us to do SEO, your traffic isn't going to stay forever. It's slowly going to go down and it's eventually going to go back down to zero. Maybe in some cases it'll stay pretty level, but right, SEO is a foundation. We set a level one of the foundation, then we build on top of it level two, level three. Slowly but surely, we're outpacing the efficiency of any other channel you have, but it takes a second to get there. And I think the biggest thing that we always set in the sales side of things as well is that this won't work overnight. But in 3, 6, 9 months, when you're asking, where are my leads? This is going to be something that you can fall back on that's going to be a little bit more predictable, a little bit more reliable. And it really sets you up for the longer term success. I think one of the most pointed questions I always have is, hey, if you need leads tomorrow, maybe we're not the best fit, but are you hoping to be around as a business in the next 12, 24 months? And I've never heard the answer to be no, which means this is a great thing to invest in. If you're planning to be around in the next couple of years and even past that, this is a great thing to invest in because while it might not, you might not reap the rewards today, tomorrow, next week, you are going to reap them over the course of time. And it ends up being a very efficient channel for a lot of our clients.
I've always viewed SEO as an enhancer and not necessarily a disruptor when trying to get found in the search economy. How do you have conversations with CEOs and teams about how SEO can have a positive impact and enhance existing growth levers that they're already running? Like, how do you talk
Yeah,
about
some of
that?
our best clients, when they come to us, they have a good insider understanding of what works on Instagram, what works on Twitter, Facebook, you name it, right? They have a really good understanding about how their buyers buy, but they've never tapped into Google. And that's always a sweet spot for us in regards to great. If you know how your customer's buying, that means we can download some of that information from you and then really just use Google to find those same people. The reality is if you're on other channels and people are buying from you, the funny thing is those people are also Googling. Well, they ended up choosing you, they probably saw their competitors. So it's not like they're using just one platform to encourage their buying decisions. They're using quite a few different platforms. So I think that's the cool part about, if we already know that you're winning on other platforms, we know what's working, we know how to really lean into that and get the value out of it. Taking what we can learn from other platforms about what people are searching for, especially for a lot of our larger B2B clients, taking in, I say B2B or even larger ticket, I think roofing for B2C, I keep coming back to. Taking the sales calls, finding the objections, finding the people or the questions that people ask and using those, right? It's easy to get in front of people when you know what they're asking, you know what their buyer process looks like.
So maybe to give listeners a little peek behind the curtain of some of the things we're thinking a lot about here at Numa, and that is like, how do we get in front of and get the attention of the CEO? Right? They're doing a million different things. They're hiring, they're firing, they're fundraising, they're all everything a CEO is responsible for. Um, how do you think about trying to get in front of and get the not only get in front of, get their attention, but like educate that individual around why the search economy is important to them in their business?
I think a lot of agencies, and even we're guilty of this in the past, when selling SEO, we only talk about SEO. And I think the larger outcome or opportunity here is not only just talking about SEO, but it's talking about the business goals as well. One of the easiest ways to get people bought into it and get excited about it is not ask what the marketing goals are, but ask what the business goals are, right? Where do you want the business to go to? If you're Acme Corp, where do you want to be in the next 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20 years? And figure out what their goals are and show how SEO can be one of the many tactics that brings you to that goal. Again, I think a lot of times it's SEO is talked about within the light of SEO or marketing goals, which isn't bad, but we like to take it one step farther and get people really bought in to understand that, hey, this is a tool that can solve your traffic issues, can maybe solve some of your customer acquisition issues, but what if it could help you solve your larger growth goals for the business as well, or at least play a hand in that? Um, Maybe put differently, I think a lot of people just sell SEO short. They don't think about it as a big value driver. They think about it in the lens of SEO or marketing, and it just sells the opportunity that you have there pretty short. And it leaves a lot of companies looking for something like Google, looking for something like SEO, but they don't really know how to start. And they definitely don't think of SEO in that light as something that can really move the needle for them.
I'm curious, as we kind of round the corner on this episode, David. You've worked with a lot of CEOs and just building Numa in this business, and had conversations around the search economy, had conversations around SEO and the impact on their business. The most effective CEOs in the search economy, from your experience, are doing what, or doing what sort of things?
The one thing that I'd say is the most important is they're always asking their customers what matters to them and why they ended up purchasing or why they didn't. Getting a really good understanding of what the pain points that a customer has whenever they come to the company looking for a solution. And if they chose them, why they chose them in the first place. And right, those two questions can reveal some really good answers of what people are searching for in terms of, do I even have a problem, and what they're searching for whenever they start looking for a solution to that problem. Um, Using that information and passing it back to a team like us to make sure we're getting in front of the right people is really important. But I'd also say, uh, having just a good, it's really just a good understanding of the customer, what their pains are, and what they're searching for, and what their solutions look like. Maybe some of the other things that they've tried in the past. Continually diving in and getting closer to your customer through sales, and then even through the client success side of things, to understand where they were before, why they chose you, what was important to them, what wasn't important to them. Because at the end of the day, while they're telling you all of that information, they're also asking Google that information 3, 6, 9 months prior. And if you can jump into the conversation there consistently, pitch your story, so to speak, and it's proven that it's worked because you're talking to customers and clients who have already said that it's worked, then you're in a really good spot. And I think that kind of flywheel of getting insights from sales, getting insights from marketing, and passing it back to the front end of where people are really on the offense and looking for somebody like you is an important part of the process. And for our clients who do that, have been, really successful.
We will continue to discuss the role of the CEO in the search economy. We have a lot of fun episodes in store coming up. David, it's been real. Always enjoy these.
Till next time.